Coming up on today's episode.
If you've got a career-motivated buyer, seller, whoever it might be, they'll generally concentrate on the numbers first. Some of them will then throw a bit of emotion and ego in the back end going, oh, I don't lose. I'm not losing money. Well, the market's ultimately going to tell you whether you're going to lose or not.
Yeah.
That's not me. That's not the buyer. That's the market. So at the end of the day, you know, then you have the flip side of that where people are fully emotional. Oh, it's the first property I ever bought. And I buy into that. I totally get it. But if you're buying real estate to be emotional about it, don't buy it.
Dodgy advice and bad decisions can cost you big in real estate. We're here to make sure that doesn't happen. Welcome to the No BS Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Agresta, and it's time to take control of your property journey together. Welcome back, everyone, to the No BS Real Estate Podcast, your listening how-to guide to the Australian finance and real estate market. I'm your host, Joe Agresta, and on today's show, I am so excited. We have Daniel Temos here from Coronis Real Estate, but he does a lot more than just real estate. He's kind of like a jack of all trades. It's really interesting. So let me give you a little bit of an introduction to who we're talking to and what we're going to learn today. We're going to flip the script. We're going to talk a little bit about selling. Big decisions on property investors when they face when it comes to selling or leasing properties, whether you're someone who's actually holding a property at the moment thinking of cashing out or wondering if now's the time to lease it out for passive income. Today's episode is built for you. I'm joined by Daniel, like I mentioned, director at Coronis Group, who brings nearly 2 decades of experience in both residential sales and leasing. He's helped hundreds of investors make smart, strategic choices. And what I love about Daniel's approach is that it's not just about closing a deal, it's about long-term results. So Daniel, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Of course. I had to give you quite a bit of an introduction, right? Because when I was talking to you and I was putting together your questions, I'm like, hang on, we got a lot of directions here. We can go down the leasing path. We can go down investment. We can go down selling. And you said, let's stick with a bit of investment, a bit of selling, and we can touch on everything.
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
So I really like this. And like I said, you work with all kinds of clients like across the Coronis Group. You've been doing it for a while. So you've got investors, upgraders, downsizers. But what I noticed in our earlier chat is how you focus on long-term strategy. I think it's important, especially for investors, because for people tuning in who don't know much about your work, can you give us a snapshot of what you do and how you help clients make their decisions?
Geez, where do I start? I guess I've been doing this for, almost over 2 decades now. And I guess I sort of look at a much holistic view when I'm dealing with a client. I'm not just worried about getting a tenant into a property or just getting a result done, whether you're selling it or not. It's more of a case of let's understand the bigger picture. Why have you purchased the property, more importantly? And then what are you looking to achieve long term? Do you have a long-term plan? Is it a short-term plan? And then we sort of start to fine tune that. So we start to talk to owners about, what did they buy the property for? Because a lot of owners don't necessarily tell you that. I know the data's out there to go and find it, but, we're quite time poor. So we don't go and look for that data just because I'm speaking to Joe today. Yeah. We go and say, well, Joe, you've got this property. What are you doing with it? What's the plan? Why did you buy it? Because if you bought it just for the sake of getting into the real estate market, great, we know how to deal with that, but then you're probably going to be educated a little bit more than probably some others. Sure. And then on the flip side of that, you've got all right, great. So you purchased for X, you've got a plan to develop. What are we doing in the meantime? Are we upgrading the property and keeping it to the best nick possible until you're ready to go and get some plans and permits? Yeah. Or are you looking at it going, yeah, I'm going to demolish this and build a PPR on it or a principal place of residency? And then that's a different view altogether. So we try to holistically look at it, take away the transaction part of it. Yep. We just want to be there long term through the whole journey, because if we're doing a good job for you, then naturally you're going to tell 10 of your family that we're doing a good job for you. And that's naturally that word of mouth progression makes a massive difference to our business always.
Oh, of course.
And at the end of the day, I just want to do good work for good people. So the more they open up to me, the better I can do my job. Yeah. And the ones that don't do that, that's when we have a little bit of, give and take and a little back and forth in, probably more of a negative light, which is not quite ideal because then it impacts what we do on the day-to-day basis.
Oh, for sure. And I think, getting those stepping stones right at the beginning is key, especially when you're starting an investment strategy. Because like you said, I think a lot of people, especially you would see a lot of this, but people that are going to sell their homes that have been first-time buyers or first-time investors, they bought a property just because they needed to get into the market, and now that asset's not actually working for them. And sometimes it actually hinders the next steps.
Correct. Well, the first homeowner space is, or the first-time investor space is probably a little bit more tricky, and probably the part I love the most, just simply because it's almost like you've got a blank canvas. You've got someone who doesn't really know their way. They're just getting in the market to get their foot in there, and that's it. So they're really, I guess, looking to work with you from a point of view of, great, I'm going to be handheld here and you're going to tell me everything I need to do. And we'll go and protect you along the way as much as we can. But ultimately, you've got to allow us that flexibility to do that and not give us, our hands tied behind our back through that process. So first-time investors aren't necessarily aware there's minimum standards to be met, or gas electrical safety, which, compliance to be looked after.
Mm-hmm.
And when it then starts to, we have conversations around fee structures, etc., they're like, oh, but why this? Oh, but why that? I'm like, well, I just explained what we're doing. So do you need the protection or not? Because ultimately they're not necessarily ones who want to do that.
Yeah, it's
all
true.
the work in the back end. Whereas a seasoned investor will go, well, great, I know what we need to do, but maybe I'll go deal with my own trade.
Yeah.
Hey, that's all good too. But then the onus isn't back on us to go and follow up with your trade. You've got to go and do the work if you're selecting your own trade,
Yeah.
whilst you're killing us on fees.
It's true. And I guess, one of the things that I want to kind of talk about, and we've kind of kicked off this conversation, so it's timely. How you approach a client who's unsure whether to sell or lease their investment property. So it's like they've got an asset that they haven't rented it, maybe they're converting it. When they're trying to make a decision for an investment strategy and they say, okay, I think I want to sell it, but maybe I want to lease it. How do you kind of go about that?
Well, I'll find out what the motivator is for that first.
Yeah.
Why have they decided to want to sell this after however long it might be? It could be 1 year, it could be 3, and sometimes longer. But I think it comes down to a few different factors. Generally, if you have a motivation to transact real estate in any way, shape or form, it's usually for a couple of different reasons. One, financially positioned, like you're probably a bit tight, you've got to liquidate and do something.
Sure.
The flip side of that is you're probably liquidating it because you're probably overly exposed. You don't need to sell it, but you kind of want to just free up a little bit of flexibility. The other side of that is they want to fully get out of that because they want to go and entertain a different project, or they're doing something different and they've got to then throw that cash flow back into something else, whether it's a project, a different property they need to full upgrade, and that sometimes that renovation side of things can be quite costly when we're talking about older properties.
Yeah.
So we just try to debunk it and go, well, why do you need to do this? So for example, we've got a client who, approached us to sell a property, and which we currently got on the market. And, it's an apartment. The apartment space isn't amazing at the moment. But the reality is they had financial advice where they had to move that to liquidate it and go move that cash into something different for retirement planning. But the reality is the timing of it or the price point in the market hasn't quite aligned. So we haven't been able to do that quite effectively. So whilst that then becomes my fault, we understood what the game was, but the reality is there's certain factors that then a client will turn around and go, well, we want X, or we need to do it in X time. But it's like, it sometimes just doesn't align. So for me personally, or just our business as a whole, we look at it and go, well, why does it need to happen? How much time do you need this done? So we try to reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
So we go, great, Joe needs to transact this property. In what time frame does it need to happen? And realistically, where do we need to be positioned to make sure that we do that in half the amount of that time?
Wow. So that's, I think motivators are a huge thing, right? You said it spot on. Like you need to know why someone is thinking about selling or thinking about leasing. Like what's the long-term goal?
But buying's the exact same thing.
That's true. Yep.
You might want to buy to get into the market, but why are you actually buying it?
Yep.
Are you buying a flat piece of land that you're going to develop on in the next 6 months? Great. No problem. You know what the plan is. But are you buying a house to rent it out to then do a development later on, and then all of a sudden it's a 10-year plan, not a 5-year plan? That's a different thing altogether.
Yeah, you're right. And I think, a lot of buyers out there you probably would have experienced, or buyers, sellers, anyone who's like in this property game, their mind changes according to these discussions that they
100%.
have. And do you find that happens a lot in your discussions when you're talking about it?
Always. Always. I always have clients who will turn around and say, oh, I spoke to so-and-so and he gave me this great idea. I'm not telling you how to do your job, but
there
I'm
it
like,
is.
well, if you're not telling me how to do my job, why the fuck are we having this conversation?
I like the way you put that. Why?
Like, why are we having this conversation? Like, I'm here to do the best job I possibly can with professional integrity and ethics at all times, and you're giving me absolute BS.
That's true.
Like, that's ridiculous.
And you kind of find like the challenge with these like clients at the time, like a lot of people do challenge you or say, well, your fees are too high, or like what you're trying to offer is too high. Yeah. Do you ever get them come back to you later on and go, probably should have spoken to you a bit longer?
Short answer, yes.
Yeah.
And if they don't, I couldn't give two shits.
And I love it. This is the No BS podcast, just a reminder to everyone.
Look, at the end of the day, I mean, everyone wants to pay as minimal possible for a service. Yeah. But in these days, when we're talking, let's put our property management hat on for a second. There's so much red tape. There's so much understanding that needs to go on into what we're doing, so we can go and educate a client to do the best we possibly can. So in the event that something turns pear-shaped, knock on wood, right, we're fully protected.
Yeah, makes sense.
But it's a little bit of give and take. I try not to get too caught up in the I got so and so fees quoted over here and I got quoted fees over there. That's great. If you want to work with them, go for your life.
Yeah, it's like, see you later.
Like, there's plenty of you out there.
Yeah,
it's not a problem.
I think, and one of the other things I wanted to unpack here is there are some key factors when you're determining, what path is right. So is it purely numbers, or is there a little bit of emotion that comes into this decision?
Depends who you're dealing with. I find that if you've got a career motivated buyer, seller, whoever it might be, they'll generally concentrate on the numbers first. Some of them will then throw a bit of emotion and ego in the back end going, oh, I don't lose. I'm not losing money. Well, the market's ultimately going to tell you whether you're going to lose or not.
Yep.
That's not me. That's not the buyer. It's the market. So at the end of the day, then you have the flip side of that where people are fully emotional. Oh, this is the first property I ever bought. And I buy into that. I totally get it. But if you're buying real estate to be emotional about it, don't buy it.
Yeah.
Just don't buy it.
I like that. I like that viewpoint because I often talk about, like, obviously being buyer's advocate, right? Emotions is a big part of like the residential space. It's huge. And that's why often we're hired to come into these roles, is to advocate and take the emotion out of it. And having to coach someone who wants to advocate for themselves and go to an auction, just go and witness an auction first.
Happens? Yeah.
Go and have a look and then feel that pressure, because it is even high pressure for us when we're negotiating for you. So when you often go to these auctions, those emotions are so high. It's similar.
I think it's, when people are buying property for their own personal use, specifically, it's not an investment. It's not going to be development. They're purely going to live in there for the next 15, 20 years. I think that's where the emotions are at a much higher peak point, which then causes a little bit of grief, because then you obviously want to provide a service from an advocacy point of view and go, well, we want to get a deal done for you. We want to help you as much as we possibly can. So, I mean, where's the fine line of, all right, you've got to just pare back your emotion a little bit. Otherwise, you're just not going to get this done.
Yeah, it's true. And it's important, I guess, going into the current market in Melbourne, because there's so much talk at the moment, especially with the election just being had and all the opportunity. Do you think there is more opportunity in holding and leasing properties at the moment, or are you seeing smart exits paying off?
It's a bit of a double-edged sword, I think. Personally, I think that anyone who's transacting real estate in the Melbourne market, or just the market as a whole in Australia, if you're worrying about what the government's doing to you, just don't transact. Like, that's as raw as I can give it to you. Because I think at the end of the day, if people are worried about, are the interest rates going up, interest rates going down, well, maybe you got to look at your financial structure.
Yeah.
And just pare it back a little bit, go, maybe we're exposed here. Maybe we've got to make a different decision, not worry about what the interest rates are doing.
Well, you can't predict it anyway as professionals. Like when people say, when's the right time to buy?
Wall, right?
Yeah, correct.
So everyone just thinks we've got, all the magic, but we're not in the business of magic. We're in the business of people.
Yeah.
Right. And ultimately, two things will happen. You've got financial structures and you've got a need.
Yeah.
Right. And those two things, sometimes they align beautifully and everything happens and it's nice and magical. No problem.
Yeah.
But when it doesn't happen, That's because one of two things isn't quite vibing together.
It's true.
Right. So that's where the meat in the sandwich going, okay, great. Where do we bring this fully together? What is the position? And then what is the need or the want or the requirement to go and facilitate through, if that makes sense. So
No,
I think
it does.
in terms of the position of the market, I try not to get too caught up in it from a professional standpoint. And obviously we've got our own properties, so we're obviously looking at different things all the time. But if I'm going to buy a property, it's purely based on opportunity first and what I want to do with it. I'm not looking at, are the interest rates going up tomorrow? Are the, is the government going to kill us on taxes for the next 4 years? The answer is probably yes.
Yep.
Is it going to stop me from buying real estate in 4 years? Probably not.
Yep.
And I think everyone should take that point of view holistically to a degree. If your risk assessment or risk, I guess your taste for risk is not at a high level, then you probably got to sit back and go, I'm just going to wait it out.
Well, and like it brings me to another point, like with yourself, like obviously you deal with different clients in different walks of life. What is your bread and butter? Like, someone listening who goes, oh, this Daniel bloke knows what he's talking about. I want to chat to him. I don't know what I want to do next. Like, who's the main target audience that you service, and what do you offer them?
So I guess from it's sort of changed and evolved over time. I personally, I love dealing with two types of clients. Either the first time homeowner, first time investor, because that way I become more educational and I find that very fun.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of that, it's the busy professionals who need the expert advice from an advisor point of view to go, hey, I know you're just not just an agent, but you're someone who's going to have our back, guide us as much as possible. We know there's things out of your control, but those people tend to be more numbers focused. We need the numbers to track a lot,
correct,
as much as possible. And then now I'm not an accountant by any means, full disclosure, but when it comes to numbers in real estate, I think I know what I'm talking about. So I've got a holistic view of how things should run, how they need to move forward. And sometimes you have great wins for clients, and sometimes they kind of go a little bit obscured, but that's not because of the work we're putting in. It's just purely what the market's delivering. So I think those two client points, they're I won't necessarily call it bread and butter. They're just my favorite
to deal with.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, because I love the educational side of things too. It's fun. It is fun.
Yeah.
It's good to open up someone's mind to a whole new concept, or 100%. Help them understand.
Otherwise, we just got Groundhog Day, and it's so annoying.
Oh, it's boring as.
Yeah. Right.
That's it. And shifting into selling, I've wanted to talk about this because, for investors that are considering a sale, what should they do before listing their property? Because this is a hot topic at the moment. It's, preparing for sale.
So the two things they've got to be aware of is that if they're going to sell the property with a renter still in there, there's a compensation piece that needs to be discussed.
Right.
Now, anyone who wants more info on that, they can reach out. It's a little bit elaborate. But basically, if you've got a tenant living in a property, that's an investment and you've got it up for sale, you've got to compensate for every single time that you visit that property, even if it's 5 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I've got an owner right now going, do we have to do that? Right. That's the legislation.
Yep.
Thank you, government, for that.
Yeah, true.
So my recommendations is always, if you're going to sell an investment, go and do what you would normally do, selling your actual prime home.
Yeah.
Because that sale and a sale of an investment should be treated the same. Yes, they're two different things, but you've got to treat them the same. You've got to present it well. You've got to stage it well. You've got to photograph it well. And what people are visually seeing first to come to your door is going to make a world of difference. As soon as you don't take that recommendation, now we're not here to force people to do things.
Yeah,
I think we know what we're doing. So when someone doesn't take that advice, Joe, it's like one hand behind your back for the campaign. Beautiful.
Well, yeah, because look, real estate professionals like yourself, you're not just selling one house every 7 years or every 5 years. You are selling houses weekly, daily, and and if you look at it on a year-on-year basis, it's huge.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're going to take that advice, actually take it.
Yeah.
Don't challenge it.
Yeah, but also I think that people are easy to forget because they always go, well, why do I need to spend money on that?
Yep.
And it's like, well, it's a fine line of, whilst I don't have a crystal ball, do you want a premium price for your product or not? Because if you don't and you just want to get a sale done and it's just transactional, no worries. It just might take time.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? But if you want something that's going to be done in a shorter amount of time, there's a guarantee almost around the process and the way it should run nice and effectively, then take the recommendation.
Yeah,
if you don't take the recommendation, well,
there's a door.
I had some more words for you.
Oh, damn, I should have got you to leverage that. But I guess, and following on the same theme, like, how do you guide pricing strategy for investment? Like, especially if it's tenanted, like you mentioned, or needs updating, because I feel like pricing is a big make or break factor. Like, I'm an ex-real estate agent, and I remember when you got the pricing wrong at the start of the campaign, it would screw you.
Yeah. Like I generally like to run a process where I've got that first initial 7 days of hitting the market. If I don't see certain metrics and certain numbers being achieved or hit, then I know that our price point's off the mark. Now, I don't let it deter me for the first week or the first initial open or any BRPs that we sort of run. It's more of a case of I'm telling the client, that's first 7 to 10 days. If I don't see the metrics I want to see, we've got a pricing issue. And if we've got a pricing issue, that's the first thing I'm going to be talking to you about, even before anyone steps into that property.
And how do they respond? Like, because I feel like when you're transparent up front, they respect it more. Like, it's much easier to have that discussion.
Well, I just tell them at the very, very first go, before I even get the opportunity to list it.
Yeah, right.
Like, look, guys, this is the way I run my process in a holistic point of view. The first 10 days, and I will remind you of this, is the most important part for a number of different metrics. And this will ultimately tell us if our price point is going to be met in the market and perceived well with the value or not. And if it's not, you're going to get a phone call from me going, we need to sit down.
Yeah.
Now, some people go, yeah, great, I remember that conversation, no worries, let's make it happen. Others are like, oh, let's give it a few more, let's give it a few more days or a couple of weeks. And then all of a sudden it's been 3 months and they're like, what have you done? Well, you haven't let me have the conversation I need to have.
Yeah, that's right. And look, this is a note to our listeners. Like, if you're thinking about selling, these conversations, they're tough, for you and for, your agent that's representing 100%. You. Like, you need to be open-minded when you're trying to sell your property. It is an emotional time, but if you want a good result, you've got to be open to the feedback and to the guidance, because ultimately you're paying the real estate agent to come in and do a service, which is sell your property for the right price. And like, how often you would do this? Sometimes, and we're taking a little bit of a break from, like I said, we've flipped the script today on this episode, because normally I'm talking about the buyers and how they can, look out for certain traps and how do you avoid a dodgy real estate agent. But it's equally important that these buyers will become sellers one day, and they will, if not, they are sellers.
Yep.
One of the things that I've noticed is, when you're pricing a property on the market and you get that wrong and you have to have a drop down, it's always seen as a negative from the market. Like, the buyer comes in and goes, oh, what's wrong? I've been monitoring this property for so long.
I think that just comes down to education from a buyer. And I mean, I've bought and transacted real estate before, and I go, well, I don't see it as a negative. I just see it as an opportunity. But if there's something ultimately wrong with the property, what is it? Let's go find it.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think not enough buyers actually go and spend the time to get a builder to have a look at it, because 9 times out of 10, a buyer's not a builder.
Yep.
And I mean, even some tradie buyers aren't necessarily any good anyway. So,
well, this is why I wanted to have you on the show, Daniel, is because I do like your approach and your honesty, especially with your clients, like whether they're buyers or sellers, investors or not. It's actually kind of rare to find an agent that does deal in a similar way to you, from my, my experience. And, I think one of the other questions is, what are the common mistakes that you do see sellers make when offloading an investment property, like when they're getting it prepared?
I guess not allowing us to really guide them to, I guess, attract as many buyers as possible. And that comes in multiple facets. It's pricing strategy. It's preparing the property. And for me, presentation is key. I'm OCD. Right. Yep. So I look at it and go, presentations first before price.
Yeah, right. So is that like staging? Would you recommend staging properties?
It might need just a little bit of TLC. Give it a lick of paint. It's needed. Hasn't been painted in 7 years. Probably needs a little bit of a
update.
You can always put lipstick on a pig, but it's not necessarily going to be any good, right? But the point is, the point is though, is that sometimes if you've had a property for 10 years and you've painted it not even one time, hey, it's due for a paint.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you to go change the world. I'm not telling you to do a kitchen or a bathroom. If you can avoid the big ticket items, do the things that are cost effective within reason, because it will make a world of difference. We did a campaign a couple of years ago where we had an owner who had a property for 23 years off memory. And, it was forever an investment. They always had a tenant in there, and it was managed really poorly. So the people coming in and out of it was a little bit bad. But I said to the owners, look, if you genuinely want to sell this property, you need to remove the tenant. That's absolutely the key one. And then we've got to look at what the next steps are for the property from a presentation point of view before we even discuss price strategy, because this has been neglected for far too long.
Yeah.
And if you're telling me you need to get an X amount minimum price point, which was available in the market at the time, then you've got to allow me to do what I need to do.
Yeah.
So we didn't go and upgrade a kitchen, upgrade a bathroom or anything like that. We upgraded carpet, flooring, we painted, we put new blinds in, and it was just a little 2-bed terrace. So it didn't have big yards or anything like that, but we tidied up the back, we tidied up the front, we painted the front fence. And then all of a sudden, we priced it well, we had a great auction, and we got a number that still to this day, they're stoked about.
Wow.
So it's just allow the process to unfold, but you got to take that recommendation. We're not saying go spend 30 grand because you're going to get 60 back, especially in the current climate. There's no guarantee, right? But at the end of the day, these same things will constantly deliver a result in 4 to 6 weeks as opposed to 3 to 12 weeks.
Yeah, that's right. And I think one of the things I want to kind of unpack is when you are sizing up the right agent to do the job, what kind of things, because it's like a job interview. Like when you're hiring an agent to sell your property, maybe 3 agents will come to the house and, they give you an appraisal, a price valuation. What's the criteria that, a seller or an investor who's selling should look out for?
I think, God, I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers now, but I think at the end of the day, someone who's willingly going to do the best job for you, not just list your property at a price you want to hear and then crunch you until you get a transaction done. It's ones that actually understand what the requirement is to get that property sold and why, and what that allows that seller to then achieve. So it's not about, great, we're going to list it at $1 million, but we're going to sell it for 800.
Yeah.
Which, full disclosure, CAV will probably be on your back anyway.
That's true.
But the reality is I think they've got to be a little bit more open-minded, understand what they need to do, and then find the agent who's actually going to allow them to transparently then understand what they need to go and do that. In our market at the moment, and I think we've discussed this before, Joe, there's agents out there who, they'll get in their fancy cars and, put on their loafers and fucking God knows what, right? But fucking just go do good work, guys.
Yeah.
Just go do good work.
It's a hard...
And ultimately, you'll attract the kind of clients you want to work with. There's enough business for everyone out there, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is the right client will be attracted to you based on what you're delivering to them from a value proposition. I hate the word value because everyone fucking uses it.
Yeah.
Right. But the reality is if people genuinely enjoy you, they'll do business with you.
Yeah, it's true.
But you've also got to understand their need. Forget about what your need is. Right. So from a seller's, perspective, it's a case of, okay, well, this is what I need, and this is what I need to tell the agent, be transparent about it, because some people just don't. They really just don't. But then on the flip side, an agent won't go and ask the right questions. You hear this, ask the right questions, get what you want. I'm like, maybe just understand who you're dealing with. That's half the battle.
Well, real estate is people, like you said earlier. Yeah. That's our job is not properties and houses, it's people.
Exactly, because without people, there's no property.
Correct. And we all need somewhere to live.
That's it.
So we're a necessary evil in a lot of ways. I'm only joking. But
just a necessary.
No. But I think, switching gears a little bit into the leasing side, because I want to utilize all your knowledge, because this episode is just jam-packed, right?
Well, full disclosure, I'm no guru. But go for it.
No, look, I want to get your take on leasing as a long-term strategy. Like, we have a lot of strategies in market, like rent vesting is quite a popular, it was a big term 2-3 years ago. It's still something being talked about. What's your take on, that kind of strategy long-term?
Look, I mean, rent vesting, it has its opposite. It has its place, basically. I think, I think it all depends on what stage of life you're in.
True.
I mean, anyone can adopt it, and it's utilized anywhere, anyhow, anywhere around the world. Not a problem. I think it comes down to your personal position. I think a rent investor who's, a professional couple, probably with no kids, they've got flexibility. They can do a move every 2 years here and there, no worries. But someone who's probably got kids, who's embedded into a community because they've got schools and sports and fucking God knows what, then, you've got to look at it and go, we probably need to set up a bit of roots.
Yeah, that's true.
If you then look at the holistic, I guess, if you take a step back and go, well, does a residential property being your home, is it a good investment? Probably not, because it's not. Like, an investment is a vehicle to draw income, cash flow, etc.
Yeah.
Your home is not going to do that. So that's where some people will turn around and go, great, I'll go and buy more properties, but then I'll go and live in Brighton because I want to live in Brighton. I don't need to tell anyone I rent. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And that's where the fine line is. So it's not limited, but I think it's based on, I guess, personal position.
Yeah, right.
Like, personally, I love the rent investing idea. I don't know if I would do it specifically.
Yeah.
But then my ideas on investing are very different to the most. So
yeah, well, talk to me a little bit about that. So, you say they're a little bit different. How would you describe that?
Well, look, I mean, everyone purchases a property because they want to be in a certain area, certain location, certain postcode, certain zone, certain type of property, etc. Now, if you're genuinely buying an investment, it's like buying something in the stock market. You're generally buying a part of something to draw income out of.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10 in our market, you're buying real estate and you're doing 2 things. You're either trying to draw an income out of it, or you're going to flip it because you're still trying to draw income out of it.
Yeah, true.
Right? So if you're investing in real estate, I think the view should always be about how to best position yourself to draw as much income out of it as much as possible. Now, it's 2 ways. It's cash flow or it's capital. Now, I think in the shorter term, there's going to be a huge potential on capital.
Yeah.
As long as you buy right. Don't go, buy in a certain sort of low demographic suburb, and expect you're going to make $3 million.
Yeah.
May not happen. But you might do that and go and develop and still make you $3 million.
Yeah, that's true.
So it just depends on opportunity at the same time, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, it does.
So, I think there's a big stigma around, buying properties, buying them in a certain location, etc. And yes, I agree with that. You should do that if you've got the cash flow, the serviceability to make that work. But if you're someone who's just getting in and just, toying with the idea and this and that, you've got to look at it holistically. At the end of the day, you're going to take a 30-year mortgage on something.
Yeah, that's right.
Surely it's got to make money because you're not going to be wanting to pay for it out of your own pocket. Right. And I think not enough people look at that as a vehicle to go, hey, I've just spent X. This is the type of property it is, and it's going to give me X amount in my pocket that's going to allow me to go and do X, Y, Z. Because, I think for a long time, our market has, captured the whole negative gearing thing for so long. And, tax breaks are amazing. Don't get me wrong. Whoever's not minimizing their tax is stupid. But at the end of the day, an investment should be making money for a reason.
Yeah, and it needs to be, it's a vehicle to make money. Property is that vehicle.
It's not there to lose
properly.
Money.
Yeah, that's 100%. Right. You're not wanting to buy property so it goes backwards and causes you a world of pain and a 30-year mortgage.
Correct. Yeah. So, I always say to people, if you're buying a property just to buy it and hope that it grows in capital, but you're not buying very well, then there's nothing I can tell you that's going to change that.
Yeah, true.
So you've got to look at it, again, holistically and go, okay, where do I have a great opportunity now in the market that's going to give me capital growth, cash flow, or whatever it might be. It's probably harder in our marketplace when, the average bloody sale is $1 million to, have a positive cash flow investment, let's call it. But, it's not out of it's not out of reach. You just got to buy well.
Yeah, it's like you have to do your due diligence or engage with the professionals that are doing this day in, day out.
100%. But just, follow the numbers. The numbers will ultimately tell you, and, lately we've been speaking with a lot of interstate investors, and they're like, what does this particular area and pocket look like? Is there commission housing, this and that, whatever. All relevant things. But still it comes down to two things, the numbers and what you're doing with the property.
Yep. And like that motivation always comes into play.
100%.
Has to.
100%.
Daniel, that's been so awesome to have you on the show. I think the Coronis brand as a whole has always had a really great reputation with me down in Cranbourne East, where I've done a lot of trading. I think I've dealt with some great agents, and it is a different caliber of agent, I've got to admit, versus some of your other conglomerates that sometimes talk very well. And
please tell me off air, please.
I can't wait. But I've just dealt with some and what is just holding so true is, like you said, it's the people first approach. Every time I've had to deal with an agent on behalf of a client or even for myself, and they happen to be from Coronis, I've had a friggin' awesome experience. Like I've not been able to fault it. So, hats off to you and what you've built, down at your office with your team. I think you're doing a great job, especially like such a suite of services that you offer experience. Last thing, how can people like you have heard this episode today and go, I think I want to sell, I think I want to buy, I think I want to start a portfolio. What do I do? How do I contact Daniel? I just need him to organise me. How should they reach you?
Oh, call me, email me, Instagram me, whatever you like, however you need to. I'll pass on some details to you, Joe. You can pass it on to anyone.
Amazing. I'll do that. I'll put it in the episode description so anyone can access it. But once again, thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom with us. That was so insightful. And for anyone listening today who's sitting on an investment property and wondering what to do next, we covered a lot today. We covered how to weigh up selling versus leasing, what smart landlords are doing to boost returns, the most common mistakes investors make, and how to think bigger than just one property. If you want to connect with Daniel or chat about your property strategy, all of his details are in today's episode description as mentioned, including links to the Coronis group and where you can reach him directly. So Daniel, again, thank you for joining me. It was so great to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Look forward to the next one.
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, we're going to do another. We'll probably talk about Collingwood. No, turns into a footy show. No, but for everyone tuning in, thank you so much for listening. If you got value out of this chat, make sure you follow the podcast, leave a review, or send it to someone who's tossing up their next investment move. Thanks for listening to the No BS Real Estate Podcast. Catch you next time. That's a wrap for this episode of the No BS Real Estate Podcast, powered by Abodi AI. If you found this conversation helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who might need it. If you're looking for more guidance on your home buying journey, you can visit www.abodi.com.au for expert advice, property insights, and the tools you need to find the right home with confidence. If you're already on your journey, you can also download our app. Just search Abodi AI on the App Store or Google Play. Have any questions or want to connect, you can follow us on Instagram at abodi.com.au or send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.